Hello everyone, welcome back to Sports Theater. On this video, I'm going to look at every team's biggest offseason need. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe. The Baltimore Orioles are still in rebuilding mode, so I wouldn't expect them to do that much this offseason. Their biggest offseason need is pitching. Alex Cobb and John Means return to lead the rotation, but Wade LeBlanc is a free agent and the rest of the internal options are uninspiring at best. They should look at some veterans to add to their pitching depth. Their general manager could sign a veteran starter or two on a short-term deals or trade for bounce-back candidates. The good news is for the Baltimore Orioles is that they did better than expected in 2020 and are starting to show signs of improvement. Things didn't go great for the Boston Red Sox in 2020. Their manager was fired and their pitching staff was one of the worst in baseball, and they finished at the bottom of the AL East. The Red Sox's biggest offseason need is pitching. Boston needs to address a rotation that brings a 5.34 ERA in 2020 and a bullpen that brings a 5.79 ERA. With the return of Chris Sale and Eduardo Rodriguez, the pitching will improve. But the Boston Red Sox still need major help. For starters, Homer Bailey, Matt Moore, and the return of John Lester should be all on their list this offseason. For relievers, the Boston Red Sox need to fill out the back end of the bullpen with shutdown relievers. Jack Lee Bradley Jr. is a free agent this year, and the Boston Red Sox should bring him back with not many options in center field. Boston rehired manager Alex Cora, who was reintroduced after serving a one-year suspension issued by the league for playing a key role in the Astros' electric sign-stealing scandal in 2017. The Boston Red Sox still have a lot to figure out for the future, and this offseason will show on what the future has to hold. With another early playoff exit isn't exactly what the New York Yankees were expecting. They will need to prep for a busy offseason. DJ LeMahieu, Masahiro Tanaka, James Paxton, and J.A. Happ will all be free agents. They have already declined J.A. Happ's 2021 option. For the starting rotation, the Yankees have some spots to fill. Garrett Cole, Luis Severino, Jordan Montgomery, and either David Garcia or Domingo German could make up 80% of the rotation, but New York figures to add at least one arm, if not two. Re-signing Tanaka seems like the only guy the Yankees would bring back. They might not want to spend big on an arm such as Trevor Bauer after agreeing to a $324 million contract with Garrett Cole a year ago. Their general manager could also target a controllable starter, using Miguel Andujar or possibly Gary Sanchez as a trade capital. The top priority for the Yankees should be to re-sign DJ LeMahieu. There is a possibility that they'll let him go and move to Gleyber Torres to second base and prepare for the fantastic shortstop free agent class next offseason. DJ LeMahieu has been important to the Yankees lineup for the last 2 seasons. He surely won't go for cheap, but he will be worth every penny. Really quick, I just want to say this. Kevin Cash, why? Alright, the Tampa Bay Rays are in great position to make it back to another World Series next season and the seasons to follow. But they have some moves to get done. Reliever Aaron Liu is the only actual free agent reliever that the Tampa Bay Rays have this offseason. They can't afford him and should bring him back next season as well. Catcher is the only real need that I see the Tampa Bay Rays having. Their catcher Mike Zunino had a batting average of .147 with 4 home runs, including 10 RBIs and an on-base percentage of .238. The Rays declined his $4.5 million club option. Though the Rays could look to add a catcher, even if they bring him back, given the sharp drop in his numbers during his 2 years in Tampa Bay. The team's top catching prospect hasn't played above A ball yet. So there is plenty of options for catcher in the free agent market to bring in more offensive production from that position. To keep progress moving into next season, the Toronto Blue Jays will have to make some moves on the free agent market. While their starting pitching depth is solid, they should add another high-level starter, and that would help take some stress off of Nate Pearson in his second full year in the majors. I wouldn't expect them to sign Trevor Bauer, but players like James Paxton, Mike Minor, and J.A. Happ should all be on their list. The Blue Jays' biggest offseason need is a third baseman. They started 5 different players at the hot corner in 60 games last season, so finding a full-time answer at the position, even short-term, figures to be a priority for their general manager this offseason. As long as the young star players keep developing, we will see them back in the postseason sooner than later. Fresh off their first postseason appearance since 2008, the Chicago White Sox emerged as one of the top teams in the American League and in their division, until their collapse at the end of the season that got their manager fired. They recently hired Tony La Russa as their next manager of the Chicago White Sox. The good news is that a lot of solutions to their problems are already in their organization. Edwin Encarnacion failed to hit anything at the designated hitter spot, slashing a batting average of .157 with 10 home runs including 19 RBIs. The Chicago White Sox declined his option and also declined Gio Gonzalez. Top prospect Andrew Vaughn is MLB ready to fill in at the designated hitter spot or first base when needed. Closer Alex Colom is a free agent, and unless the Chicago White Sox can sign him to a cheaper deal, they should let him go. The White Sox have plenty of pitching depth in the organization to fill in that hole. The only real moves they have to make in this offseason are in starting pitching and possibly another reliever. Obviously, Trevor Bauer is the top prize in the free agent market, but there are plenty of other stars on the market that can fill in the top 3 spots in a rotation. The addition of another frontline star would turn the White Sox into AL Central favorites. The Cleveland Indians are in a difficult situation and it could go one or two ways. Number 1. Francisco Lindor stays in Cleveland for the 2021 season and the team tries to improve their offense in free agency. Or number 2. Indians do a soft reset and Francisco Lindor is traded before 2021 even starts this offseason. The Cleveland Indians pitching staff is solid enough. They declined the options on Brad Hand, Carlos Santana, and Domingo Santana. By declining Carlos Santana's option, Josh Naylor could move to first base. By doing that will open up another spot in an already sparse outfield. Cleveland isn't expected to spend a lot in free agency, so its options could be to bring in some risk-reward types or turn to the trade market. If I was in this situation, I would go with option 1, but option 2 seems much more like the path that the Cleveland Indians are going to take. If they do go that route, they should also trade Carlos Carrasco and some of their pitching depth for high-level hitting prospects. Here we are 4 years later and the rebuilding mode is still rolling through Detroit. The Tigers were saved by a 60-game season, so they wouldn't lose 100+ games again. This year, the Detroit Tigers should try to re-sign a few of their free agents, preferably Jonathan Scope and CJ Cron, but that's basically it. Jordan Zimmerman's expiring contract frees up $25 million payroll for the Tigers, who have just one guaranteed contract. Miguel Cabrera's $30 million on the books for 2021. So maybe they can copy the Royals and sign some low-risk free agents and trade them in next July. The Kansas City Royals are still working on their rebuilding mode, but there are a few things they can do in 2021. The lineup is in need of a boost in on-base percentage, which they finished 26th in the majors with a .309. The outfield would be a great place to start. With Alex Gordon retiring, Bubba Starling posted an awful .219 on-base percentage, one of the 5 outfielders with a sub-300 marks. Just like what they did in 2020. Sign some relievers, looking for bounce-back seasons, and then to eventually flip them at the trade deadline for prospects. The Minnesota Twins will have a busy offseason ahead of them. They have tons of free agents this offseason. The biggest priority for the Twins will be to re-sign Nelson Cruz on a maximum 2-year deal. On offensive, the Minnesota Twins can fill a lot of positions internally. The catching situation does have some question marks, with Alex Avila becoming a free agent. Their best option is to pair Mitch Garver and Ryan Jeffers together. On the pitching side, Jake Odorizzi and Rich Hill are both free agents. And while Jake has interest in returning, it's unclear whether the Twins will pay him what he's seeking. Minnesota could decide to go big, believing a number 1 star could keep them ahead in the AL Central pack as it pursues a 3rd straight division title and a 4th trip to the postseason in 5 years. The Astros bullpen is in need of a makeover and to sort out what to do with their outfield. Outfielders George Springer, Josh Reddick, and Michael Brantley are all free agents. The Houston Astros payroll is already near the top in MLB. George Springer is one of the best free agents on the market, and the Astros will almost certainly be outbid by another team this offseason. Michael Brantley could be a contender to come back on a qualifying offer. Houston could look for a replacement in the outfield, and top fits would be Jackie Bradley Jr. to emphasize the defense and former Astro Robbie Grossman. But their top priority should be signing Jackie Bradley Jr. and finding some good reliever help on the free agent market. The Los Angeles Angels failed yet again to require an ace pitcher over the last offseason, which resulted in them missing the playoffs again for the 6th consecutive season in a row. Now that general manager Billy Epler has been fired, the Los Angeles Angels should be able to get something going. Their top priority would be starting and relief pitching help. While I don't think right now is the best time to sign a pitcher to another long-term contract, luckily, there is a starting pitcher on the market who might not want a long-term deal. Even if they can't land Trevor Bauer, there are many other stars and reliever options on the market. So there isn't really an excuse this time. And also with Simmons becoming a free agent, why not get someone like Didi Gregorius as well? Following their first playoff series win since 2006 in the AL Wildcard Series, and then getting eliminated right away in the ALDS, it's going to be another long offseason for the Oakland Athletics. Shortstop Marcus Semien enters free agency after a down season, but the Athletics should bring him back on a multiple-year deal. Second base was a hole for the Athletics for much of the season, but an August trade for Tommy La Stella seemed to solve the problem for the stretch run. He is a free agent, so they could bring him back, or Oakland could look elsewhere at a free agent market loaded with options at second base. The biggest concern I see that the Oakland Athletics having this offseason is their bullpen. Yasmina Petit, Joaquin Soria, TJ McFarland, and Liam Hendricks are all free agents this year. It will be difficult for Oakland to sign even 2 out of the 4 back. The best bet would be for the Oakland Athletics to try to fill vacated spots with cheap reliever veterans on the market. The Seattle Mariners are getting closer to contending again, as they finish the 2020 season only 3 games under 500. For the Seattle Mariners to build on their 2020 success, they will definitely have to address their 2020 bullpen that posted the highest ERA at 5.92 of any team in the American League, along with the lowest strikeout to walk ratio rate at 1.63 in the league. Seattle has roughly $50 million committed in salary for 2021, so their general manager could look to spend on a reliever or 2. With a shaky free agent market, the Seattle Mariners could benefit and pick up some good free agent relievers for cheap. I don't think the Seattle Mariners would want to commit to any top free agent relievers yet, but maybe next off-season. The Texas Rangers couldn't hide the bad baseball that they were playing. Their offense ranked last in the American League in runs scored. With their payroll coming down, the Rangers won't be able to do that much in 2021 and will continue with a light rebuild next season. So the Rangers could target a left fielder, a first baseman, or a third baseman after getting sub-.700 OPS production from all 3 spots in 2020. The Rangers named Isaiah Kiner-Falefa as the everyday shortstop, which means they will be looking around for a third baseman in free agency again. For this spot, Jake Lamb would be a great fit. There are several players in this year's free agent market that have ties to manager Chris Woodward from his time with the Dodgers coaching staff. There has been rumors that Lance Lynn could be traded this offseason, but the Texas Rangers should hope that he performs well again and then trade him at the trade deadline next season. Yeah, the good old Atlanta special. It's only up from here, right, Atlanta Falcons? The Atlanta Braves did have a great showing in 2020, and where they go from here is pretty straightforward. Having signed Cole Hamels to 1 year, $18 million deal last year, the Braves have another $38 million coming off the books with Marcell Ozuna, Mark Melancon, and Shane Green all headed for free agency. Out of the free agents that the Braves have, they should re-sign Marcell Ozuna, if there is a DH in the National League next year. They should also re-sign Shane Green and Darren O'Day for sure. Mark Melancon could be added to that list as well, depending on his asking price. The Atlanta Braves starting rotation had a big blow with Mike Soroka will most likely miss the first month or 2 of the 2021 season following Achilles surgery. But there is a free agent out there that the Atlanta Braves can afford and can put them over the top, and that guy is Trevor Bauer. Even though the Miami Marlins playoff meme didn't continue this year, the 2020 season was definitely a success. Their bullpen wasn't great, so re-signing Brad Botsberger and adding another cheap reliever or 2 should be near the top of the priority list. Second base is really the only position with question. Miami started 7 different players at that position in 2020, combining for 2 home runs, 16 RBIs, and a .062 OPS during the 60-game season. That was the worst offensive production at the position for any National League team. There are more than a dozen second basemen on the free agent market, so Miami should target Kike Hernandez or Cesar Hernandez in free agency. The New York Mets have a crucial offseason ahead. New York does have a few holes on their roster to fix, and under new ownership, New York should have a little more money to spend. Out of the top free agents, JT Realmuto should be the top priority, and they will also be looking for a permanent solution at center field. With free agent departures, the starting rotation will need some help as well. Noah Syndergaard should return in 2021 after undergoing Tommy John surgery in March, joining Jacob deGrom on top of the rotation, and with them bringing back Marcus Stroman on a qualifying offer. They should also add middle-of-the-road rotation starter. The Philadelphia Phillies certainly have some issues, but re-signing JT Realmuto is by far the most important thing this offseason. The front office has mentioned they're looking to cut payroll, but without their all-star catcher, the future of the Philadelphia Phillies looks a lot darker than it already is. The Phillies will be looking like the Angels, wasting the prime years of their star players. There is some money coming off the books, and they should consider re-signing Didi Gregorius and adding pitching depth as well. But without JT, things certainly won't be sunny in Philadelphia. Their bullpen had a National League high 7.06 ERA. It will be interesting to see what Plan B is in the event that he signs somewhere else. After the World Series hangover, the Washington Nationals do have money to spend, but they do need to remember that they might want to save some of that money for Trey Turner and eventually Juan Soto. Overall, a team can never have enough pitching depth, and with Sean Doolittle hitting the free agent market, the Nationals need to sign some mid to low tier relievers. With the Nationals declining Adam Eaton's option, they should look to bring in another impact bat in free agency. I couldn't expect them to go after George Springer, but Jock Pearson would be a great option. It's unclear whether Steven Strasburg will be ready for the start of spring training, leaving Matt Scherzer and Patrick Corbin on top of the rotation. After those two, the Nationals have a number of question marks. Anibal Sanchez is a free agent, and Austin Voth struggled in his 11 starts. So they should look to bring in another good quality starter from the free agent market. Right now, the Chicago Cubs are in that stage that every championship team eventually goes through. They should be a playoff team, but not good enough to win the World Series, and their core is still solid, but they're only one season away from being torn apart. Their ownership and front office motivations would imply that the Chicago Cubs aren't going all in for one last run, so they don't sacrifice the limited future they could have. For this offseason, John Lester, Jose Quintana, and Tyler Chatwood are free agents. The Chicago Cubs pick up Anthony Rizzo's 2021 contract option. Jose Quintana will most likely be on his way out, but the Cubs should bring back John Lester on a veteran role. The Cubs can't do really anything extreme with trading one of their core players. Those are the realities when you can't develop pitching talent. It's unclear whether the Cubs will play at the top of the free agent market for Trevor Bauer, but there are several mid-rotation stars who could fit nicely. The Cincinnati Reds reached the postseason for the first time since 2013, despite ranking 13th in NL in runs scored. The biggest question mark for the Reds going into this offseason will of course be Trevor Bauer. The Reds are going to make a run at Trevor Bauer, as they should, but how far and how much money are they willing to give him is unknown. If Trevor Bauer does end up leaving, the Reds will do their best to replace him, from internally or with a cheaper starter on the free agent market. The biggest concern with Cincinnati going forward will be their offense. Shortstop is a glaring hole that needs to be addressed in free agency. Marcus Semien, Andrelton Simmons, and Didi Gregorius would be fantastic fits, so bolstering their lineup should be one of their priorities. The corner infield spots for the Milwaukee Brewers have been a hole in the lineup since Mike Moustakas left to Cincinnati. It is possible that the late season addition of Daniel Vogelbach will end up being the 2021 solution at first base. By third base, they will have to bring in someone new. Milwaukee has already declined Jed Jerkel's 2021 option. In free agency, there are a number of veteran options on the market for their general manager to choose from, and it depends on how much ownership is willing to spend post-COVID-19. The Pittsburgh Pirates are in full rebuilding mode, and certainly it's not going to be pretty at all. But baseball in Pittsburgh isn't going to look good at all for at least 2 seasons. The Pirates center fielders have the worst production in the National League, posting a collection .180/.239/.257/line. Their .496 OPS represented by far the lowest in the league. Jared Dyson and Cole Tucker had the volume of those at bats, though Brian Reynolds also started 15 games in center. Perhaps their general manager will look to bring in some veteran leadership to the young club. Top targets would be Jackie Bradley Jr. and Kevin Pillar. After getting the first overall pick in the 2021 MLB draft, why not start the tanking again for the first overall pick in the 22 MLB draft? Trade all of your good players for prospects and sign some veteran relievers to flip for prospects at the trade deadline so you can boost up the farm. The St. Louis Cardinals need significant improvements, which they score fewer runs than any National League team other than the Pirates. Yadier Molina will be the only big contract coming off the books, leaving the St. Louis Cardinals not much room to improve the team in free agency. The Cardinals could also look for an upgrade at third base, where their 5 homers and .700 OPS were both well below the league average. Borrowing a miracle trade for Nolan Arenado and some small depth moves, it's going to be a quiet offseason for the St. Louis Cardinals. The Arizona Diamondbacks are coming off a disappointing 2020 season. They'll have some money to spend this offseason with some contracts coming off the books, but they probably won't make any big moves this offseason. Arizona was in the middle of the pack as far as bullpen ERA in 2020 at 4.60, ranking 10th in the National League. I don't think the Arizona Diamondbacks will be ready to contend again next year just yet. There are a few depth pieces that can be added to the offense and the back of the bullpen until some of the prospects are ready to reach the majors. Trevor Story and Charlie Blackmon had solid 2020 seasons, and while Nolan Arenado wasn't up to his usual standards, nobody on the team is worried about him rebounding. Nolan Arenado has a player option following the 2021 season, and Trevor Story will become an unrestricted free agent after 2021. This will leave the Rockies with a tough decision to make whether they push forward and compete in 2021 or start the rebuilding mode. Their starting rotation was solid in 2020, but after the first 14 games, their offense showed those signs of age. If the Rockies want to go for it in the 2021 season, they need a new first baseman in free agency, and then they need to strengthen the lineup, which should be a priority for them, which posted its second straight season under 500. The Rockies can't wait to see how they're doing at the trade deadline and sell Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story if things are not working out. The Los Angeles Dodgers won the 2020 World Series. This offseason, the Dodgers will do the best they can to try to bring back the World Series roster for another shot at the World Series title. Since Mookie Betts signed that 12-year contract extension on July 22nd, that leaves Justin Turner, Jock Pearson, Kike Hernandez, Alex Wood, Pedro Baez, and Blake Trinan as this year's free agents. Justin Turner is entering his age 36th season next year, and given his value to the Dodgers on and off the field, there is a good chance he returns to either be the everyday starter or share time with Edwin Rios. He is currently the best third baseman on the free agent market, and I think they should re-sign him. Kike Hernandez, along with Pedro Baez, should be re-signed, and the Los Angeles Dodgers do have enough outfield depth to let Jock Pearson walk in free agency. If the Dodgers don't re-sign Justin Turner, they could make their second huge trade of 2020 and require Francisco Lindor and shifting Corey Seager to third base. If that doesn't work, they could always make a trade for Nolan Arenado in the offseason. Other than a third baseman, their targets will be relief pitching and possibly a veteran star for depth. So I wouldn't expect them to be big spenders this year, because they need to get the money bags ready for Corey Seager and Cody Bellinger. The San Diego Padres reached the postseason for the first time since 2006. If the Padres do the right moves, they could potentially knock off the Dodgers as NL West Division champs as soon as next season. Their rotation is a little incomplete due to the health concerns of Mike Clevinger, who will miss the 2021 season because of Tommy John surgery. The Padres will be in the market for another starter. Trevor Bauer is a possibility, but it looks like San Diego will be going on the market for a back-end star to add depth. This year, Trevor Roosevelt, Kirby Yates, Garrett Richards, Jason Castro, and Jurickson Profar will all be free agents this offseason. The Padres would like to re-sign at least one, if not two. Profar would be the best option to re-sign because of his versatility. If the San Diego Padres didn't bring back either Kirby Yates or Trevor Rosenthal, they will need to add a bullpen piece or two as they seek a return to the postseason. The biggest needs for the San Francisco Giants right now are pitching depth. This year, Jeff Samardzija and Trevor Cahill are free agents, and Drew Smyly signed with Atlanta. That will create at least a pair of openings in the rotation. With Kevin Gausman returning, but assuming Johnny Cueto, Logan Webb, and Tyler Anderson hold their spots, there's room for another arm if not two. They should be on the market for another veteran starter as well. Closing out games for the San Francisco Giants was one of the biggest problems in 2020, so finding a lockdown closer should be near the top of the priority list in the offseason. Those were my biggest offseason needs for every MLB team. What move do you guys want your team to make this offseason? Join me in the comment section below and tell me what you guys think, and please don't forget to subscribe. Of course, thank you so much for watching. I'm Nathan. Don't forget to just keep loving sports, and I'll see you next time.